and then I'll give you the floor to, start talking to the audience.
good.
And always, type in the chat, and I'll try to troubleshoot it from my end. This session, in this session, we're basically going to keep all the questions to the end. I know a lot of you have sent questions already, so we're going to sort of mix and match. So I'm going to read some of the questions, and then have you, as the audience, ask questions as well. But I guess we will get this show started. So welcome everyone today to this masterclass. Basically, it's about creating and pitching video games with our esteemed guest here, Mike Fischer. A bit about Mike. Mike Fischer is an experienced executive in the interactive entertainment industry, having held senior positions at Amazon, Microsoft, and top video game companies, including the CEO of Square Enix America. He has led the publishing strategy for some of the biggest franchises in video games, including Fortnite, Final Fantasy, Tomb Raider, Halo, Gears of War, and Sonic the Hedgehog. Mike is also an angel investor and advisor to a number of firms across interactive entertainment, including esports, AR/VR, digital communities, AI, and network technology. He also represented the industry as the board member of the Entertainment Software Association and the president of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. Please join me to welcome Mike to Bahrain, virtually, of course. I mean, you can say he's in Bahrain already, like from the background, right? So I give you the floor, Mike.
Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm sorry for the bad combination of the sun on my shiny bald head, and if I move over here, I look like a monster. So I'll be moving around as the sun moves overhead and shifting to my slides soon. I'm really excited to be here and talk to everybody. One of the things, and I see many, if not most of you are gamers. I travel around the world with the State Department talking about my passion in games. And one of the things I love is we are a global tribe of gamers. Everywhere we go, we share this love and this passion of the games we play, and for some of us, the art we create. And I feel like I have brothers and sisters everywhere I travel around the world and talk about the games that we love and play. So I do hope I have the chance to come to your beautiful country sometime and do a class like this in person. So if you have a good time here and we lift our travel bans, I hope I can see you all. I am going to jump into my presentation. Now, you may need to give me at some point, you'll have to give me the permission to share my slides. There should be a security button at the bottom of your Zoom page that will allow you to do that. Then you can jump in and let me do. Perfect. Thank you. I just need to change it to presentation mode, and we'll be ready to go. So just as sort of a point of order, today I'm doing most of the talking. It's going to feel like a traditional lecture. But then I'm going to assign a project where folks can work in groups to put together their own game pitch ideas. And then we'll get together in one more session where you'll have a chance to share your ideas. I can give you my feedback and we can discuss them. So usually this is something that I'll do in person. We do the brainstorming in the classroom. And in fact, this is the first time I've taught this particular workshop online. So you are pioneers testing the case. You've already heard an introduction of me, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I started in the games industry right out of university, almost right out of university. I wanted to work in toys and games even as a university student. And this was 1988, before the internet even was a thing. So I bought a one-way ticket to Japan. I taught English for 2 years and did everything I could to try and find a job at any games company. And I got quite a few rejections at the beginning. I had no experience. I didn't speak the language very well. But eventually I did get an entry-level job at Sega in Japan. Ended up, learning the language, working on a number of different projects. I got to work with Michael Jackson on the Moonwalker game. I got to work with Disney on the Mickey Mouse game. And then was lucky enough to continue to stay in the games industry and work on a lot of different great games. But here's the important thing. I have no creative talent at all. I've always focused on the business and the publishing side, and yet I've been able to have a successful career in games. So I've always taken the approach as the person on the business side that my main responsibility is to help creative people become successful. But if you have a passion for games and you love games, don't feel like you have to be a game creator, whether it's marketing, accounting, finance, public relations. Every great business discipline is needed in the games business. Now, today we are going to focus on the creative side, but please understand that in any video game publisher, probably fewer than half the people actually work in creative the games. The rest are supporting people like me. Because the games industry has grown so quickly, and because traditionally it's been focused mostly on young people, and up until recently also maybe more on men, people don't realize how big it is. So last year was almost $150 billion. This year, with the growth in gaming, because people are staying at home, it'll be well over $150 billion. And it's a very balanced industry. It's balanced between mobile, PC, and console games. And it's also balanced around the world. It's about 50% in Asia, 50% in Europe, and 50% in the Americas. So it is a very global business, and it is on much more than one platform. In fact, it's bigger than Hollywood. The box office revenue is just the movie ticket revenue. Of course, that doesn't include DVDs and Netflix revenue and so on. But overall, the revenue from video games is bigger than all of the revenue from all of the movies in the world. Certainly bigger than the United States. Of course, Bollywood in India now is bigger than Hollywood, but I think all of them combined are still less than games. Just look at one year. The biggest video game was almost double the revenue of the biggest movie. And this tends to happen year to year. Some years there's a huge movie like Avengers when there may not be a big game. But generally speaking, the biggest game of the year will be bigger than the biggest movie of the year. And a lot of this happened, honestly, because of the growth of mobile games. Yeah, the PC games, the Nintendo and the PlayStation games that we love are stronger and growing every year. But mobile games have really revolutionized the business and are continuing to. First of all, they put gaming machines in the hands of people who never owned one before. Second is a lot more women started playing games. And also it's expanded to new regions. Certainly China is very mobile focused. And now India is really exploding with a love of games as more and more powerful phones reach more and more people around the world. I do spend time as an investor in games and as an advisor to gaming startups. Even though my passion is not mobile games, certainly mobile games are where most investors are putting their money. And as a developer, it probably is one of the easiest places to start because it's quicker and easier to make a mobile game. The problem is, I teach at the University of Southern California. The interactive media department is part of the Film of Cinematic Arts. We're part of the film school. And, living here in Los Angeles, movies are cool. They're good-looking men working together in teams, creating these beautiful works of art that move audiences around the world, right? It's very sexy. It's very cool. The gaming industry, what is the image? The image is either a bunch of nerds on the sofa or, a hacker alone at the basement. It's not cool. It's not sexy. But the fact of the matter is, these images, neither one is particularly true, because today, both movies and games are being made in very similar ways. Games are becoming more cinematic with richer, deeper storytelling. People tell me stories about having cried at some point playing video games. And movies are becoming more like video games. A movie like A Fast and the Furious 4 is very much a living video game. And we use the same technologies, green screen, CG art, motion capture, and face capture. We're using some of the same technologies. In fact, a lot of the movies now are being made with technology that started in video games. But what's really interesting is, while the center of cinema may be Hollywood, or potentially, based on your perspective, Bollywood, games are really global. I mean, look at this list. These are just a few ones that I came off from the top of my head. It's not just that people are making games around the world. People are making some of the best and most successful games from around the world. Big countries, small countries, rich countries, poor countries, because creative talent knows no borders. And I use the example of Finland. It's a very small country, but and I think this is 2018. It's probably still true, but I know for 2018, 5% of all of the revenue on the Apple App Store came from Finland. And that was really just because of a handful of very successful companies, whether it was Rovio and Angry Birds, or Supercell and Clash of Clans. Just unbelievable. So why is it that games are much more of a global environment than the rest of media? A lot of it is because of changes that have happened in the past few years. When I started in the games industry, it was really hard to make a game. You had to develop all of the technology. And then along the way, people realized that the physics, the lighting, the controls, a lot of the fundamentals of every game are the same. So they created middleware. And that allows a small team, using this middleware tools, to create a game that in the past would have taken a much bigger team. Also, in the past, games came in discs, in boxes that you would buy at a store. So that required a large distribution effort, sales teams. There was a lot of piracy around the world. Well, today you can just put your game on the Steam store or the App Store, and you've immediately reached a global market. So you don't need a sales team. You don't need an infrastructure. You just need a great game. You can upload it on Monday and be earning money on Tuesday. Just as important as social media. It used to be, for example, in the United States, if I was not spending at least $5 million on an advertising budget, I could not get any kind of retail chain store to sell my game for me. Today, you don't need to really spend any money at all. It's helpful if you can spend some, but you can rely on word of mouth, social media, Twitch streamers, YouTube videos, Instagram, to spread the word about your game. If it's a good game, if it's a unique game, you don't have to spend money. So what this means is, you as a small team or even an individual developer in Bahrain can compete with some of the biggest global video game companies around the world if you have the right idea and the right execution. What's really fascinating now is we're coming up with one more level on top of middleware. So if you're using middleware like Unreal Engine or Unity, it still requires some amount of technical expertise. It helps to know some programming. It's still hard to learn the tool sets. But recently, there have been some developments that mean even if you have almost zero technical skill, and to some degrees, even zero artistic skill, you can use these tools to still create expressions of your idea. It started with Roblox, right? Roblox began as a game, but with tools where people could create content. And then it since evolved into its own platform where people can make somewhat simple games in terms of art and physics, but unlimited creativity. You make the game using the Roblox tools, you upload it to the Roblox platform, and people can play. You can earn money either from the games that you sell, or you make a free-to-play game with items. and you share the revenue with Roblox. Now, Roblox is very much focused on younger kids, and they're very simple games. But a new company that I want to talk about again later is called, the company is called Manticore. The product is called Core. They're doing the same thing at a higher level. They're building their tool set on top of the Unreal Engine middleware with very simple tools that you can drag and drop. I went to their YouTube site and it shows somebody making a complete game from beginning to end in 40 minutes using the tools. All the art is in the game. You choose the rules, you choose the AI, it's all built into the platform. And what it means is you can just focus on your creative idea. Now, sometimes even sophisticated game developers can use a tool like this to test their ideas before they build it. But if you wanted to, you could build your whole game using this tool set and then upload your game into this company's platform, and then other people can buy it and play it from there. These are great sort of sandbox toy sets that you can play around with to learn how to build basic video games. Now, I myself have experimented with a lot of emerging media. I co-founded a small studio called Cloudgate. And here's what's amazing. The entire company was me and these two people you see here. And they weren't programmers and they weren't artists. They were animators by trade. They used Unreal Engine to develop their game because Unreal Engine has a system called Blueprints that doesn't require you to be a programmer. They got 99% of their art from art stores, people uploading their own 3D models and art. So every tree, every rock, and all but one of the dinosaurs was just bought from a store and dropped in for a few $1,000s. We did create one dinosaur with a custom artist. We built the game in 6 months, put it up on Steam Early Access. People bought early versions of the game, and then we used that money to finish the game. And it did very well for us. Unfortunately, it was VR, and VR has gone off to a slow start, but it won lots of best top 10 games in VR awards and did very well for us. AR is like VR, up and down, up and down. Pokemon Go was fantastically successful. HoloLens and Magic Leap, which you see here, not so successful. But we just saw Apple, not Apple announce, but rumors of a new Apple AR glasses. I think they're just calling it AR Glass, coming out very soon. So you may want to take advantage of some of this new technology because there's less competition. You can do crazier, wilder things with it, and it's easier to get attention. It might be harder early on to get some of the headsets and get some of the technology. But if you're persistent, you can get a development kit and get started. And it's much easier to make your name as a new developer with a new technology. I'm personally also very interested in the concept of cloud gaming. The idea is that instead of having to buy a powerful machine, whether it's a PC or a game system, you use a cloud-based system. So the processing is happening in the cloud. And you get efficiency because you can share the same hardware. So, you know, there's a time difference between our two regions. So one point in time, you're playing on a server, you go to sleep, I'm playing on the server after that. And that kind of management of peak gaming means that you get a better efficiencies from it. Google and Microsoft are jumping in. Amazon is rumored to jump in. Facebook is rumored to jump in. And again, this is great because you can also develop in the cloud. You don't even need to have powerful PCs as development tools now, because all of the technology is in the cloud. All of these trends, middleware, digital distribution, cloud gaming, it's democratizing gameplay. It's easier than ever to develop a game, and it's easier than ever to reach around the world. So the question is, well, what do you do if you have an idea for a game or you have a desire for a game? What can you do? 10, 15 years ago, the idea would have been that you You build a concept for a game, you build a prototype, and then you try to find a big game publishing company to pay you some money to either buy it from you or fund you to develop it. These days, the model really has changed. It's about developing the game on your own, publishing it by yourself on a game store, building up a games community, and keeping all of that revenue to yourself. It's scary in some degree because if you're not business oriented, you may make a great game but not know how to build an audience or build a market for it. But there are a lot of tools out there, and I spend a lot of my time as a coach not teaching people how to make a better game, but teaching them how to make their game more commercially successful. It's always best if you can self-fund. You know, you're working as a student, you're working at a day job, and maybe nights and weekends you get together with your friends and your team to build a game. Certainly, you don't need to be together. It's something you can do during this era of coronavirus. A lot of small game teams are independent. And I've seen teams where there's an artist in China, a programmer in Europe, and a game designer in the United States, all collaborating together. But try to do as much as you can. Nevertheless, at some point, you're going to need to communicate your idea to people. Maybe you're pitching an investor, right? Maybe you do need, you know, a few $100,000 to support your team or to fund some marketing for your program, or maybe just to rent some space for you all to work together because you like working together. So what I want to do is give you some formats and some templates on how to pitch your idea in 5 minutes. Some pitches are 20 minutes. Of course, if you're showing the game to someone, that will add to you. But the key to me is to really communicate everything about your game in a simple 5-minute pitch. And I'm going to show you a template with an example of how that's done. The idea here will be that over the next few days, you work on your own simple game pitch and come back and we practiced it together in the workshop part of this program. So let's jump into it. Now, to some degree, the idea is the easy part. I don't know how all of you can see this. This is from a humor website. I often do hear people who say they have a great idea for a game, they just need someone else to build it. It's not that easy. The tools we've talked about definitely help, but honestly, it's easy to come up with an idea. It's hard to turn that idea into a game, or even harder, into a business. So keep in mind that it's very helpful to have a team of collaborators who can work together on every part of the idea. It seems like there are some, as I've done some research on Google, you know, there are some game development communities and teams in Bahrain. I don't know if there are opportunities to meet up and get together, but certainly I'd encourage everyone who's on this workshop to try and find a way to get together and discuss ideas and collaborate. Hopefully one day I'll come out there and help you, but certainly just understanding who else is in your area and sharing skills and sharing ideas is a great way to get started. So yeah, the ideas are easy, but the ideas are also the seed. Having an idea without a team of people to build it is tough, but having a team of people without a good idea is probably even tougher, because I've seen teams spend a lot of time and money lost because they don't have a clear creative vision for where they want to head. So you really need to have both parts together. But just as important as having a good idea is communicating it. Once I was working on a fighting game some of you may know called a Tekken. And we were working on a Tekken 3, which is the third one. And we went to Japan and we talked to the team and we said to him, what's going to make this new one better? And he leaned back and he says, because it's my game. I'm making it. That's why it's going to be great. And he could do that, right? He had already made some great games. But if you don't have a track record of making great games, your first challenge is to help people understand why your game will be special, why your game will be fun, why your game will be successful. Number one rule is to keep it simple. we have something we call mentor whiplash. You ask one person advice, they'll say go left. You ask another person for advice, they'll say go right. Everyone will have different advice. That's why you have to ask lots of people and make your own decision. But the one thing everyone will tell you about your ideas, about your communication, about your product is keep it simple. Here's some examples. All right, 1, 2, 3, pretty good. What's better? 1, 2. And if you can get 1, even better. The fewer words, the fewer pictures that it takes to communicate your idea, the more likely someone is to remember it. And it's also important to be different. There are 500 apps put on the App Store every single day. On the Steam Store, the main marketplace for indie games, there are 30,000 games available. So imagine going into a video game shop with 300,000 games on the shelves. It'd be huge. And standing out and being discovered is really hard. Now, most of those 30,000 games aren't very good. But even if you just took the best games, the top 10%, it's still 3,000 games. So I would much rather have you be black licorice. There are a number of different names for this concept. In the UK, they call it a Marmite brand. The point here is most people hate black licorice. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like the look of it. Maybe only 5% of people who eat candy like black licorice. But for those 5%, it's their favorite. They will walk through the rain to find more black licorice when they run out. They take it with them on vacation. They don't want to be without it because they're passionate about it. I would much rather support a game that has a small, passionate audience than something that just tries to be something for everyone. So don't copy what's already out there. Try to be something different. You know, there are probably with mobile games 2 billion gamers out there. So even if you only appeal to 1% of the gamers out there, that would still give you one of the biggest games in the world. So don't be afraid to do something unique because the big game companies, Activision, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, they're aiming for that huge, vanilla ice cream market. You can afford to make your black licorice flavored ice cream. I have a sneeze coming. And they usually come in twos. So get ready for this second. So here's the format. This is the only thing you really need to write down today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll go through these concepts and then I'll go through some examples for you. First of all, you're going to do a top summary with the big picture. This is even more than an elevator pitch. This is like oh, thank you. Someone sent me a bless you. Thank you very much. I think I've made it through the first one. We maybe didn't get a 2 today. If you can give me the idea in 30 seconds at the beginning, then for the rest of your 5 minutes, I'm really enjoying the comments. Then for the rest of the 5 minutes, I'm waiting to hear the rest. If I don't understand your idea from the start, I spend the rest of your 5 minutes wondering what it is. I had a student 6 months ago give me his top line pitch. It was the first day of the class. And I asked everyone, just tell me a little bit what you're working on. He says, my game is going to be about what it's like as a kid to go down the stairs at night scared just because you want to get a snack from the kitchen. It's like, I love it. I'm in. Because he wasn't telling me what I was doing. I don't know if it's a puzzle game or an action game or what. He told me how I feel. He says, I'm going to give you that feeling of being a scared kid going down the stairs at night to get a snack. That was all I needed to know. So start with just a quick summary. What's the game? Just a quick, what are you doing? What's it like? Just really quickly. Try it if you can. Not just tell me what I do, but tell me how I feel. The second thing is, this is a very common aspect for any startup. So what's the problem? What's the solution? Or sometimes you can say, what's the environment? What's the opportunity? Right? So it's very difficult and complicated to get a home loan in America. We're going to simplify it. Or, today's shooting games are violent and only for older kids, or not for kids, for adults. We're going to make a game that has the fun action of a shooting game, but it's friendly and open for kids, right? That's what Splatoon was. Splatoon takes the fun of shooting people, but removes the violence. Whatever your idea is, if there's a way to say, hey, games aren't good at this, or there's not a game that addresses this audience, we're going to make it problem opportunity. Or there's the environment. For example, suddenly in the last year or two, India has crossed a threshold and more people are owning phones that can play video games. We're going to make a video game target on the Indian audience because it's 1 billion people and there aren't games designed for them. That's more of the environment and opportunity. Or maybe even, for your own culture or your own region of the world. You may not feel that there are games that are available there, targeting that audience. There's a great opportunity. Someone says, I am Indian. India is the hottest place for video games right now. It's a great combination of a market that loves video games and is starting to explore them, and also a lot of talent to be able to make games. But there are not a lot of games made for the Indian market or made in India. So lots of untapped potential. But I think that's also true of the Middle East, North Africa region as well. There's a large market. There's a great audience. There's a lot of talent, but not a lot of focus. Then I want you to take 1 to 3 slides just to tell me about your game. Illustrations are good, but not always necessary. So it's up to you. But a picture can definitely help give an idea of how your idea works. Sometimes you can tell the story in 1 slide. Sometimes it may take longer. But it's good in a quick pitch just to let me know how the game works, right? What are the mechanics? How do you play? What do you do? And then finally, just tell me what makes it special. What makes it different? The last thing I want to see is something that looks exactly like another game. Even if there's a lot of similar games, find something about your game that's unique and different. Finally, it's very helpful to see a genre map, and I'll show you an example. So let's take a quick look. I am going to show you a game from a graduate of the University of Southern California's game program. He's a startup entrepreneur. He created a studio called Game Cake. So this is his first slide, and he begins. And by the way, this is really interesting because this entrepreneur, Ishan Mathur, was not a student of mine, and yet independently he really did come up with a good illustration of how these fundamental concepts work. Now, every pitch can be different, and it's good that they're all different, but there are some fundamentals that they all tend to follow. So he begins with a top overview, right? Next generation content for connected TVs, the largest untapped gaming market. What he's talking about is a game that doesn't play on a phone or a PC or a PlayStation, but something that might play on an Apple TV or a smart TV. So it's a market that he feels is underdeveloped and hungry for good original content. His point is games on connected TVs are not designed for connected TVs. So Apple TV incorporates a gaming feature, or your new Samsung TV comes with games that you can download from the Samsung TV store. The problem is they're all really bad. And the reason they're bad is they were designed for other platforms and then just kind of, ported or transplanted onto this smart TV. and they're not very fun to play, and they're not very social. So he feels that the opportunity is to develop a game specifically with a smart TV in mind. So now, he's hit the top line concept. Then he hit the problem and the solution. And now he's talking about how the gameplay works. So it's local play. So there's a social play, but the idea is everyone's on the sofa playing together. It actually uses your cell phone connected to their smart TV into your platform so that you're using your own phone as the game controller. And the games can last a little bit longer than, a quick round of Tetris or Angry Birds. So you can relax and spend some time on it. So 1, 2, 3. Simple, easy to understand mechanics and illustrated with simple pictures. Then this is where he jumps into the details of telling you how the game plays. I'm not going to walk through it, but the point is he shows you a picture of his game screen. And if your game isn't finished, fine. Just take out a pencil and paper and draw a picture of it. Take a picture with your cell phone. But he talks about, this is the way you get the charades. So you get an idea suggested from the computer that you see it on your phone, but your partners don't. And then you pick emojis from your phone screen that show up on the main smart TV screen that everybody sees. Then the rest of the group has to guess what it is. So he explains you how it works. And then finally, the third slide is he talks a little bit about the technology behind it. You don't have to have technology. Maybe it's a unique feature of your design. Maybe it's an unusual art skill. Maybe it's because you're making a game that takes place in Bahrain. Whatever is unique, whatever is special, whether it's technology or skill, maybe you're using music in a unique way, try to add that, what makes your game special. And this is the genre map. Genre maps are interesting, and you can, if you Google genre map, you can get a million examples. And that is because almost every startup pitch, whether it's games or not, uses some form of this. Some people will go for more of a checklist format, but the idea is you pick two axes to illustrate the nature of your gaming environment. And then you put other leading games in the space or products in the space. And the idea is you illustrate that you're picking a market environment or you're picking a genre of games that has commercial appeal, that has a track record of successful products, but you've identified a space in that environment where there's nobody exactly there. Now, in my case, in this example, Emoji Charades is the only game in the top right quadrant, but there can be more than one. You just don't want one right on top of you. So the way this works is home platform means like a smart TV or an Apple TV. Game platform means like a cell phone or most likely a PlayStation, Xbox, or a Switch. And then solitary versus social. So yes, people are making games for home platforms, but they tend to be standalone games, just a fill-in time. They're not social. And there are social games, but they're all for dedicated game platforms. So if you don't have a game system in your home, but you have a smart TV and you want to play some games, friends or family who come over, there's nothing there for you. And that's what Emoji Charades will do. And that's the basic template that I would like all of you, or for those of you who want to participate next week, to come back and present. Now, Ali can work with you to coordinate. Because of limited time, I want to try to keep the feedback to 5 presentations. So there are a number of ways we can do that. You can work independently in teams, or if all of you want to work on your own and submit 20 ideas, Ali can pick the 5 best and we can discuss them. Also, if you want to come back next week, but you don't want to present, you're shy, you don't want to work on it, you just want to watch, that's okay too. So I'll let Ali coordinate with that offline. But what I'd like you to do next week is come back. We'll let you share your screen. You can present your ideas. I'll give you my thoughts and feedback. And my experience is the questions that we'll get from the other participants are also really helpful and really interesting. You don't have to have any technical expertise. You don't have to be a game designer. This is just about sharing your idea. We're not going to worry about the technology behind it or how you're going to program it. It's just about the idea. And so it's a good creative process to explore. So that's all the content that I have. I am going to stop sharing my slide. I already have some questions that people have asked. I am going to quickly call some of those questions up. And then if anyone else, well, let me ask this first. Does anyone have any specific questions based on the presentation? So the questions I have are general, but if there's something you don't understand or if there's something you disagree with, I'd love to hear it. And we can talk about that first. So I'll give everyone a second if anyone wants to type in a question. When pitching, should you include a financial model? Thank you for that. That's a great, great question. So I will say this. Some people say yes and some people say no. It's funny because I teach a class on gaming entrepreneurship. I say yes, but the textbook that I assigned, the author says no. For this particular exercise, no. If you're pitching to people who are, potentially going to fund you, probably yes. If your idea is so great, sometimes you can get away with saying, look, we're just going to build a great game, build the audience, and then we'll figure out later how to monetize it. That being said, games have just a few very simple financial models. You sell it for a fixed price. You give it away free with a microtransaction or with advertising revenue, and then sometimes a combination of them all, right? So my favorite game is Rocket League. I paid for the game, but then there are additional microtransactions inside. So it's good if you can say that. And then the next question is, how do you, all right, another Abdullah, another fan. How do you forecast what your revenue is going to be? This can be really hard to do for other startups, but it's pretty easy in games. There's a website called SteamSpy, steamspy.com. And they do a pretty good job of estimating what the revenue is for most games. So what you want to do, if you're planning to make a standalone game that you sell for a fixed price on Steam, you can find a similar game and benchmark it. So you get 3 or 4 games, say, look, this game did 100,000, this game did 300,000, this game did 500,000. So I think my game could easily do at least as much as the lowest one, 100,000, right? Don't benchmark against Call of Duty. Don't benchmark against the biggest game out there. Pick a small indie game like your own. Now, if your game is free with microtransactions, it's much, much harder. The general rule is called the 10-10 rule for free-to-play games. Only 10% of the people who play a game will ever spend anything. And only 10% of them will spend enough to make a difference. So you're monetizing 1% of your audience, which means you need to build a game so that your craziest players will be spending hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars per game. But for this part in the process, the most important thing is just to make a game that people love and want to play. Then if you get 1 million people playing your game, you will find a way to make money. Let's see here. Is it okay to include early concept work of your game? No polished models or scenes, but showcase how the game will work in some core mechanics. Yes, you can do that, but it's hard to get funding for that unless you really have a good track record of success. So most people at the bare minimum will want to see a working prototype. Some investors want to see a game, especially for mobile games, that's almost completely done. And the reason is that for mobile games, you have to spend a lot of money advertising them to really build up an audience. So generally speaking, they'll want to see a game that's 80% plus complete. But it all depends. You know, if you have a team of experienced developers with a great track record and you have an idea that's compelling, you can get funding. But honestly, these days, even pretty experienced developers, most people will want to know that through bootstrapping or friends and family, you've spent enough time and you've dedicated enough time to show your concept working. What if the game you've developed is too focused and it doesn't appeal to the market you created for, like Pillars of Eternity 2? Which is funny, because Pillars of Eternity was created by a friend of mine, Fergus, from Obsidian, and his studio was acquired by Microsoft. So I think that he's not too worried about the finances since he has Microsoft backing him up. But, you know, the interesting thing about Pillars of Eternity is that this developer, Obsidian, for many years worked building games for other people. They built one for me when I was at Square Enix. It wasn't very successful. The problem was, even when the game was successful, he didn't really make a lot of money. So even after 10 years, he was struggling. So then he made his idea, the original Pillars of Eternity. Am I thinking of the right one? I always confuse it with Pillars of Creation. I think it's Pillars of Eternity from Obsidian. It was a lower production value, right? The graphics were not nearly as dynamic as the games that were funded by outside people. Oh, thank you. It is Obsidian. It was a simpler game. You know, it was more text-based than graphics, but it was the game that he and his team really wanted to make. It was focused on story, and it was very successful. And the thing is, even though this game sold a very small number compared to the big games he made for other people, he made Fallout New Vegas, he made the South Park game. Those games might have sold in the millions, but he didn't make much money. Even though his games sold far less, it was Black Licorice. It was a type of game that a small audience was very passionate about. And because he didn't have to share the money with a developer, he didn't have to recoup his development advance, it was the most financially successful game he ever built. Now, I don't know enough about 2 to know where they got it wrong. It's possible that because they were in the process of selling the company to Microsoft that they lost their focus. That can happen. Someone's asking how you negotiate with publishers. If you're lucky, a publisher will let you keep 50% of the revenue. And that's if you're able to fund most of the game yourself. If the developer is funding your project, the general rule is the developer keeps all of the money until they've earned back whatever they paid you. And then after they've earned that back, you start to share. And most people never cross that line. Publishers know that most games lose money, but they want that, 1 out of 5 that's a hit. So it means 4 out of 5 games, the developer never recoups their advance. So negotiating with a publisher, generally speaking, the publisher is going to hold most of the advantages, and they're not going to be a lot of flexible on terms. Certainly, if you have a game that's at a point where you're negotiating with a big publisher, I think the important thing to do is find a lawyer who's experienced in the games industry. This will be the first time you've negotiated, but the publisher will, the lawyer will have negotiated 100 games. So these lawyers are expensive. I mean, the lawyer that I use and recommend to people charges $600 an hour and a $5,000 minimum. But if you're working on a very large deal with a publisher, it's really good to have that advice. Can small teams of 1 or 2 people make a successful game? Yes, right? The example that I used with my VR game, Island 359, was a team of 2 people. They had the right skill set because the stuff that they were not skilled at, programming and art, they could work around. They bought the art from the marketplace. You really don't need artists. Any art you need today is probably going to be available on a marketplace. And while you probably will have an easier time as a programmer, you can use tools that don't require you to be a coder, such as Manticore, Roblox, or even Unreal Engine can be developed without any programming skills at all. But learning how to use Unreal Engine is probably just as hard as learning how to code. The ideal size for an indie team is really hard to say. I mean, ideally, you are going to have a creative designer, a coder, an artist, and an animator. It's really good if you could have someone with all those skills, but it's not necessary. And it's not necessary for them necessarily to all be, it's not required for them to all be working at the same time. If you're making something that's culture history oriented for a small country like Bahrain, should localizing it to different languages still be a goal for this specific project? You know, English is probably the best default, but it depends how important language is. The best situation is if you can make a game that doesn't need language. If the language is just text, it's pretty easy to localize it into other languages. It gets harder when you're recording voice. So I would encourage you to try a game that uses minimal language, so it's really universal. Use text whenever possible, and program the text in your code so it's not built into the graphics. In other words, you can create the text in game so that at the programming level, you can copy and paste new languages into the code, and it's very easy to change or add. And then how do you properly market your game to increase target audience visibility? Great question again. Social media is your friend. So the first thing that I would encourage people to do are find the influencers on Twitch, on YouTube, who are playing games similar to the ones you want. Reach out to them and share what you're doing. Now, a lot of these influencers expect to be paid for what they do, but if you're making a unique game and you know that that particular influencer likes that type of game, when they're not busy, they'll pick it up and play. And that was my experience. Sometimes we reach out to a player and he would say, you're going to have to pay me $5,000. We didn't have $5,000 for the team, so they waited. And eventually the guy had a slow period where there were no VR games available, and he went back and he played our game. And it helped us a lot. I think also social media, Facebook marketing is great because most indie games don't spend even $1 on marketing. So if you spend $1, you're already ahead of 99%. There's an old dad joke that most of you have probably heard. Two people are walking on safari, and they start to see a lion walking after them, getting ready to hunt them. One guy stops to tie his shoes, and his friend says, "Why are you tying your shoes? You can't run faster than a lion." He says, "I don't have to run faster than the lion. I just have to run faster than you." And this is what marketing on Facebook is like. You spend $500 a month marketing your game. Say, $100 in change every week, and over the course of marketing on Facebook, you'll find which targets click on your link. You'll find what does better, and then it becomes a positive cycle. And let me tell you, Facebook wants your money. They make it very easy for you to advertise your game on Facebook or Instagram. The tools are very simple. It's drag and drop. There are lots of tutorials on how to do it. And it's actually a lot of fun. You learn a lot about your game, right? You throw it out there and you say, "Wow, people who like my game is not a puzzle game, but people who play puzzle games are clicking on my ad." Okay, and then you just may find weird coincidences and affinities for your game. So you don't have to spend $1 million, but even if you can only spend a few $100s, it definitely helps. And then the other thing I would say is build a game community. Even if it's just local fans, and then go on Reddit, create a subreddit for your game. Go talk about or share videos of your game on other subreddits. And then Discord is another great place to meet your community. A lot of gamers like supporting indie developers, and they love the idea that they can talk to their developers. So Discord is a great tool for that. Also, one trick that I recommend to people is whether it's funding or support, if you have voice in your game or art in your game, you want somebody to fund you, record their voice or put a picture of their kid as one of the characters in the game and make it personal. And to say, look, if you can fund me $100,000 to build my prototype, I'll record your voice. I'll make the hero, look like your son, or I'll put your house as a background in the game. And you do that with influencers as well. Ask them to record some voice for the game, or ask your fans to collaborate. Building up a community is really helpful. And I've seen developers have a better publishing deals because even during development, they were already building a big fan base. Can a failed Kickstarter game hurt your game sales? It can. A failed Kickstarter can still be a successful game. Kickstarter is not very good for games. A Kickstarter is great for board games. It's harder for video games because it takes a long time between funding the Kickstarter and delivering. A lot of Kickstarter video games have failed to deliver. And the most successful Kickstarter games are black licorice. So again, if you're going to make a game about, I'm trying to come up with a really bad example in a short time. If you're going to make a game about rabbits, maybe there's a community of people who love rabbits who will get behind you. But if you're just going to make another shooting game, no one's interested, because Kickstarter is about a cause. People want to know that they're funding this game because it's something meaningful, it's something important, and they're willing to take that risk to help you. Because if it's just a good game, they'll wait until it's done, and then they'll buy it, and then they'll play it. But you need to come back to them and say, the world needs this game to be made. It's about my cause. It's about my passion. It's about my tribe. If you share my cause, if you share my passion, if you share my tribe, let's get together and make it happen. Those are the games that get funded. So you want to make a game that gets funded on Kickstarter, make a game about protecting lost animals from danger. All right? That's what I want to protect the animal. Here, take my money. That's going to help you. Not just another game about driving in cars and shooting people on the freeway. Shovel Knight, Darkest Dungeon for Kickstarter, good examples. It's harder now. Like the early days of Kickstarter were very good for video games. Later days are not. The other thing about
I'm sorry to cut you off, but there are a lot of games. There's a bad track record on Kickstarter in general. Like the worst case scenario happened this April. I don't know if you heard about this game, Mike. It's called Chronicles of Illyria.
No. Oh, what happened?
So this Kickstarter game asked for 900K from basically to be funded with. They ended up extending and extending and extending at the time until they accumulated 8 million in crowdfunding, and then they just dropped the project day and night.
Yeah.
So the problem, like Kickstarter is a good way to put, in my opinion, a good way to put out game changers. Like
that's a good phrase. I like that, game changers.
So, for example, Lyrian Studios, like those people have sort of changed the game in that sense. But you get these people that basically milk people for their money and then they just disappear. So yeah, it's just not a good model, or not a good model to follow. But there are a lot of people that deserve to be funded. That it's basically about doing your own due diligence and
yeah. And look, there are other tools out there. One is called Fig, F-I-G, and that's one that's interesting because a team of experts will evaluate you and your team first before it goes on the platform. And they have a variety of funding mechanisms where you can even have revenue share. Kickstarter is great for board games and card games. A friend of mine just raised $1 million on Kickstarter for his card game that's 80 cards. So basically all you had to do was draw 80 pictures, come up with a rule game. And it didn't even seem like such a good idea to me. The game was called Tapeworm. And the gameplay, you have to cut a tapeworm. But he earned $1 million. I think the other thing is it's a lot of work for Kickstarter. Some people now are spending tens of thousands of dollars just to produce and promote their Kickstarter. So you're trying to raise $50,000 for your game. Someone else is spending $50,000 so they can raise $1 million for their game. So it can be hard to do. Let's see here. My question got buried in the chat. Sorry. How would that pitch format discussed in the slides differ when you're pitching to the devs that you want to recruit? I don't know that it would. I mean, you want your vision to be pretty universal. Now, certainly you can tailor it so that obviously if you're looking for artists, you're going to pitch about what your art needs are. But the core dream of your game should be the same by everybody. Someone who once worked with George Lucas said he heard this story from him. I don't know if it's true or not, but he said, every part of your body has the same DNA. So whether it's a blood sample or a hair sample or a skin sample, it's the same. He says, if you're working on an organization, no matter who you talk to in the organization, if you ask them, what's the DNA behind this company? They should be able to give the same answer. So you may, if you're pitching to an investor, you may focus more on the business model. If you're pitching to a publisher, you may focus more on the fact that you're a reliable developer who will finish the game on time. But that core concept, and that really is the five topics that we went through today, that should be universal. Everything else is just case by case. Practice makes perfect for pitching your game. Yes, definitely. I've worked with a student who had a great idea but never practiced his pitch, and then every time he started to give it, he would make mistakes and back up. The great thing about video game pitches, though, is if you can build a prototype, even if you're not a skilled presenter, if you play the game well or make a good video, it helps. A good YouTube video is even more important than a good pitch deck. So that's the one advantage that video games have. Ethically marketing a game is something I think about a lot because I did some consulting for an investor who was looking at kind of like gambling oriented games. My wife heard the conversation and she just said, I don't feel good about that. I don't feel good about working on a game that's going to take money away from people who may have a gambling problem. So I have to respect that. And I think the important thing is you have to decide for yourself ethically what you're willing to do. Some people have issues with violence in games. I think there are issues with addiction and gambling in a lot of mobile games. I've dealt with people who have their own religious constraints on what type of content they want to make. And the great thing is there's room for all of that. You have to do what's right for you. People have to feel that the game they're making is true to their values. Marketing is no different. I think the most important thing is that because game communities are so vocal, if you do anything that misrepresents your game, right, the game community will know and will find you. You just have to look at the game. I forget it every time. The space game with the open world that disappointed so much on launch.
No Man's Sky. That remind me.
Yeah. Although to some degree they did turn it around a little bit, and so there's No Man's Sky.
Star Citizen 2. I agree.
My son has spent I think over $100 on Star Citizen. He didn't ask me first. He was like, "Hey, Dad, have you heard of this game called Star Citizen?" I don't know.
I had a friend who spent almost $1,000 on virtual ships that are not even designed yet or not even released to the game yet. I'm like, are you buying fish in the sea right now? What are you doing?
I really don't understand. I saw the Twitch video where he wanted to show the world that the game was real. And the Twitch live stream was 2 hours of the IT guy who couldn't get the game to run. And you know what? People are still putting in, my son put in his money this year. What was he thinking? So, and the problem is, as with the game that you mentioned, Ali, is that every time somebody does that, it makes it harder for the honest people who come later to do it right. But I think, again, if you can build up a small community of people, right, it starts with the people you know, and then it goes to their friends. And that community can build and sustain you. The key to the community, though, is you have to keep building assets. You've got to go on Discord and talk to your fans. You need to share videos every week if you can, and really make people feel that they're part of it, right? So you want to know that if you post an update on Reddit and you tell your friends, they're all going to go on Reddit in the same hour and upvote it so more people see it. That type of community really means a lot. And, if you're, in a part of the world like Bahrain, then, you'd like to think there are lots of people in your city, in your country, who want you to be successful. I went
I got.
to,
I'm
just
sorry
one
to
quick,
cut you off. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
went to Kazakhstan last year, and the whole time I was there, I was talking about this small game from Kazakhstan, a mobile game made by a husband and wife team, so two people. And I told everybody at every lecture, it's a free game. Download it now and give it 5 stars. At the end of the week, it won Apple's Game of the Day. So, and that was Kazakhstan. So if a small team can do it, then anyone can do it.
Mhm. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mike. I really wanted to hear your answer on this question. This question is from Hisham Shihabi. I don't know if he's in the call with us right now, but he says, should the Middle East develop original games or Arabified existing ones?
Oh, original games, for sure. For
Mhm.
sure. And again, you know, you could make a great ninja game that takes place in ancient Japan. Or you could make a game that is uniquely about your own culture and history. There's room for all of them. I don't think your region of the world is well represented in the rest of the world, and I think it's misunderstood. And I think that games are a great way to help fix that. Um, I look at the example of Japan. When the prime minister of Japan appeared at the end of the Brazil Olympics, he welcomed people to what should have been this year's new Olympics in Tokyo. He dressed up like Super Mario because that was the image that people had of Japan. People love Japan now because of games and anime. And it's really changed, and it's created a generation of people who really love Japanese culture. Uh, I think that no movies or no books about your country and your region and your culture are going to have that impact like a video game can. And I don't think that Assassin's Creed is the best example. So don't let other people tell your story. Tell your own story in a great way and let the world see it. So yeah, Assassin's Creed definitely made people more interested in Middle Eastern history. But I think you can go even deeper and better than that. And they don't have to be educational games, but they can be games that along the way help people understand. There's a generation of people who learned the Japanese language because they love Japanese video games and they wanted to play more of them. I would love to see in, 20 years, Bahrain be the Hollywood of video games. It's a great way to extend your culture. And because games are played, today in PvP around the world, you can play directly with people from other countries, right? Whoever plays Rocket League, please, add me online. My gamer tag is a game go global, all one word. And I'd love to play with you. We'll pwn some noobs together. That's something that's really unique about games, and it brings people together. So I would definitely, part of the reason why the reason why I do these sessions uh, is because I want to see more of these stories told around the world. Like, we have enough ninja games. Thank you. We have enough special forces games. I love them. I enjoy them. But I want to see games about your culture, about your history, and life today. I mean, I would love to see a game that takes me around modern Bahrain today in this world and understand what it's like to have an adventure in your city. Those are the things that we're going to have to build together. No one's going to build them for you. So that's basically what I have to say today. But I'm very interested to hear what your ideas are. So I'll leave it to you as to how to best coordinate the teams and pick the presentations that we share. But I saw someone had a game called O2 I think built in Unity. I tried to get it to play and I couldn't. But certainly, if any of you, my guess is some of you are clearly very experienced and talented artists and designers already. Some of you already have great game ideas. So you're always welcome, through Ollie, if you wanted to send me an idea to look at or give me your feedback on, I'm happy to do that. I also suspect that just among the people on this session today, there's more than enough talent to build a lot of games. I've seen some amazing portfolios. Like the quality of art was just stunning. So I can see there's fantastic talent there. So hopefully one day we can all find a way to get together and collaborate. And I'd love to continue to see your progress as time goes on. But as a starting point, happy to take your pitches next week.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. With regards to collecting the pitches, I would basically, I think most of you guys know each other. If you would like to work in teams, or if you already have a pitch that you want to send over, you already have my email address, so you can send me those out. Unfortunately, for the time constraints we have for next week's session, we'll only review 5. So if you want to team up and create one together that basically addresses most of your questions, that's the ideal case scenario. But I'm going to be receiving the pitches, and then we'll be selecting 5 of those. So sorry, and thank you for your understanding for that. I would also like to thank the Unity Bahrain, the Unreal Bahrain community over here for participating today, especially Yusuf Bahazza. They advertised this in their community, and I'm looking forward to see their pitches, honestly. And I'm trying to get to know them better and see how we can support them in the future. We also want to thank AFS for having Mike here. AFS is short for the American Film Showcase. It's a program, it's a collaboration between UCLA and the Department of State to bring out people who are basically, established and well established in the film and now the game industry. So thank you very much, Ben and Stefan, for being here and getting Mike to be on the team. And I'd also like to thank the Ministry of Youth and Sports for their support and advertising for this session on their platform. This idea, like the main idea of these sessions actually came from basically discussing with them what can we do during this, time of pandemic to, engage people. And this was one of the ideas that they came with, and I'm really glad that we could do something about it. So thank you very much, everybody, and I'll be sending you a separate email by the end of the week with a Zoom link, and hopefully, I don't know if I should mention anything about the pitches right away, but I would say the next email will basically give you the latest link for the session on next Monday. And I'm looking forward to see your pitches, guys. Send them over. And any questions directed to Mike, I'll basically forward to him directly. So yes, who was this? Hamad Al-Mahmid, thank you for asking this. Yes, the session is recorded, and we're gonna share it. Basically, I'm gonna share the 2 sessions after, they conclude. And once I get them on to a platform, I'm gonna share it to a link with everybody who signed up to this. So yeah, that will do. All right. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today. I mean, I had a great time, and I'm sorry that I had to cut you off multiple times. I just wanted to talk as well. I was like, hey, and yeah, I'll see you next week, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, Ollie. Glad to know you're a fellow gamer.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.